Hello and welcome to the final episode in the Marketing Strategies for 2025 podcast series hosted by Exposure Ninja. This week we're going to be talking about email marketing and how we can help you to create a high ROI strategy for 2025. And the reason that we've decided to make our final episode about email marketing is because it presents some of the best opportunities to drive a high ROI. But you do have to adapt to all the changes that are happening this past year or past couple of years. I've seen a lot of changes in the way that technology allows us to reach people via email, how we can process the contacts that come through to us as well. There's also a huge increase in interest and desire for privacy as well. That's also impacting deliverability, how much we can or cannot share, how frequently we can email people as well, how often those emails actually get through to, as well as changes in consumer behavior. Are people reading emails as much as they used to, or are they going somewhere else? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm delighted to be welcomed, welcome. I'm going to welcome you. Delighted to be in a position to welcome one of our best marketing specialists at Exposure Ninja. I'm delighted to be joined by Lennox Potts, who's the email marketing team manager at Exposure Ninja. How you doing, Lennox?
I'm doing well, very well. Thank you, Dale. Very happy to be here. Honoured to be the final guest on the podcast as well. Oh, you're on mute.
Not the final guest ever, but
the final guest in this series.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually really enjoyed this series. This is episode 8, and we've covered lots of different things like how to create a fantastic PPC strategy, SEO strategy, a generative engine optimization strategy as well. And this one, I think, is probably going to hook all of that and put it together, because without email, a lot of those channels don't really get as much of an ROI as they potentially can. But we'll come on to that a little bit later. So the first question I really have for you about email marketing and how to create a strategy for this year, for 2025, is how has email marketing changed in the last 12 months? How has it changed in 2024?
Well, that's a great question. And I think when you're talking about email marketing, it's really important to differentiate between B2B and B2C email marketing, because there's a huge difference between the tactics that you would employ for each of them and also how you would measure results for each of them as well. I think with B2C email marketing, GDPR has obviously played a huge role in kind of cutting through a lot of the noise and spam emails that were being sent out to consumers. So over quite a few years, that's really starting to become more of a inbound marketing generation effort to grow your lists. And then once you've grown the lists, it's really important to nurture them and segment them properly and make sure that you're getting everything that you can out of them. Whereas in B2B, because of the legitimate interest opt-in clause in GDPR, there's a lot more possibility to kind of do outbound outreach and also gain a lot more kind of ROI from some of the data platforms that are popping up. And there are new data platforms popping up all the time. A huge one that's kind of grown massively in popularity last year is called Apollo.io. And that's kind of brought the offerings that platforms like ZoomInfo and DiscoverOrg have to at a much more affordable cost for businesses. So I think that is really taking off and has taken off massively in 2024. Almost everybody is using a platform like that now because the costs have come right down.
Before you continue, I just want to ask a little bit of a clarifying question about something you mentioned there, which is about legitimate interest. Can you expand a little bit more on what that is? Because I imagine not every marketer will understand that at the level that you do as somebody who deals with email marketing every day.
Sure. So when you're working on business-to-business marketing, B2B, you can always get in contact with somebody who holds a relevant position in a business within an industry that is relevant to the product or service that you're offering. So if you were, let's say, a company that produces burger machine flippers, a machine that flips burgers, you're under GDPR, you're well within your rights to get in contact with someone who operates a restaurant that makes burgers without ever having had any sort of previous contact with them, just because the product or service that you're offering is directly relevant to the business that they're running. So you're well within your rights to send them an email or give them a phone call as long as it's through business channels. The difference is you're not allowed to find that person on LinkedIn and message them personally, but you can get in contact with them through a business telephone number or a business email address.
Fascinating. You mentioned there also about some of these kind of like emerging tools or tools that have gained more traction. Can you just give us a bit more advice on like what they are and how they work, and whether we should be employing them within our marketing strategies?
Yeah, sure. So if you're in a B2C, if you're trying to come up with some B2C strategies, I would kind of not necessarily take this advice on board right now, but if it's B2B, then it's 100% relevant for you. So some people may have heard of something like a Zoom Info or a Discoverorg before. They're basically massive databases of almost every single business email address and business contact telephone number in the developed world, sort of UK, US, and a lot of Europe as well. What you can do is you can go into those platforms and enter segments of people that you're looking for. So let's use the restaurant example again. You could say, I want to find every single restaurant that falls within this criteria. Let's say it's between 50 and 150 employees. They've got 3 separate sites because you want them to have be a certain size restaurant to be able to afford your product. They are making this X revenue per year, and I want to see all of the procurement managers that operate within these restaurants. They'll then bring up a big long list of everybody that meets that criteria. If you pay the subscription to the platform, often they'll offer a per contact cost as well. Then you can download that information and use it to start sending them marketing communications. So it's a really good way to get some outbound efforts up and running if your inbound efforts are not drawing enough traction on their own.
And what has the reaction been to the use of these tools? Like, as somebody who's in a leadership position, I have to say that I've noticed an increase in inbound messages and emails to me through assuming some of these platforms. Are you seeing, like, from what you're aware of it, are people bothered by this? Has there been a negative reaction to them, or are people just carrying on as normal?
So I think there's definitely an oversaturation in the market now. So like you, I get maybe between 5 and 10 outbound emails a day from completely cold sources that I've never heard of before. And I kind of just put on a visor when I'm going through my email inbox of like, I've never heard from that person before, never heard from them. So I just won't even engage with it. I won't open it. I won't click on it. Often I'll mark it as spam so that I don't get any more from them. It's kind of become so much now that even unsubscribing and clicking into the email and going through and clicking unsubscribe has become too much effort because there's just too many of them going on. So it will kind of brings us on to something else that I know we're going to talk about a bit later on, which is what shifts can we expect in the future. I think it's really important to bear in mind that because these platforms exist and they've gained so much popularity, that everybody is doing it now. So if you're kind of just catching up and starting to do it, you really need to consider how you're going to do it. It's not, you can't just join one of these platforms, send a cold email and hope that suddenly you're going to have a bunch of leads come in. That's not the case anymore. Whereas when they were new and just starting, that cut through was definitely held a bit more stock, but it's not working like it used to just because of how saturated the market is for it.
Does that present a challenge for you as an email marketer in terms of how can you cut through when people's inboxes are receiving ever increasing volumes of emails every day? Like, how do you stand out?
Yeah, it presents a huge challenge. And it's something that we have a lot of data on, luckily, from having worked in email marketing for quite a long time. We've got a huge amount of data to see what does cut through and what doesn't cut through. The most important thing is not sending unnecessary communications. I think it's making sure that the communications that you've got set up that are automated are happening at really specific times in your marketing life cycle and also your sales life cycle. And then anything on top of that is really high value, so that when someone gets an email from you, they know that they're going to get something valuable out of that email. They know there's going to be a discount if you're in the B2C world, or there's going to be some really great advice or a podcast that they're going to want to join if you're in the B2B world. You have to have a really big focus on the quality of your email. There's going to be a massive shift from quantity to quality, and it's already happening if you want to get decent open rates or decent click-through rates, because everyone out there now is doing some form of email marketing because it's become really accessible to the masses.
On that point, I'm gonna just pull us back to my original question of how much email marketing has changed in 2024. Has some of these tools, and especially I'm gonna have to ask it. I'm sure everyone's like, please don't ask about AI. Well, here it is. Has AI made an impact into how email marketing creation, delivery, strategy has changed in the past 12 months?
Yeah, I was holding off talking about it for as long as possible. We managed about 10 minutes, so that's not too bad. That was point number 2, though, in the list. I didn't want to make it point number 1 because it's everyone's point number 1. But so AI is just, like with everything else, it's having a huge effect. On top of now the data being super readily accessible because of the rise of the cheaper data platforms, you've also now got basically within 10 seconds, you can write a whole outbound email flow to this massive list of contacts that you've just downloaded fresh from your platform. So the fact that everything is now super accessible, anybody can write one of these sort of flows, it's making it almost impossible to cut through the noise, because the fact that everyone's using it means that as AI learns from what it thinks people want to hear, it's kind of just making everything similar. You could ask it to write a flow for a food and beverage company, and then you can ask it to write a flow for a law practice, and it'll end up with almost exactly the same thing. Just a couple of the bullet points within the email will be slightly different. So it's really important that your content is original and providing value, and not just, hey, ChatGPT or others are available too, can you please write me a 4-email flow for an email sequence to talk to a CFO about how my product's going to help them save money? That's not going to cut the mustard anymore.
How are you using it right now?
I don't use it a huge amount. I use it largely for time saving and to summarize my notes from calls to give me action points. It's not even email related. I will use it for inspiration for topic ideas. That can be a good one sometimes. I'll just ask it to find me a sort of bunch of articles that are related to the topic that I want to talk about, and then that'll help me down that path, mainly for research rather than actual writing purposes. And then outside of creation and campaign creation, using it to summarize things for me, because I find it's really, really good at that. But you can and we have spent hours and hours and hours building out custom GPTs for specific clients, giving it all of this information, like, here's the tone of voice document we've put together for them, here's their value proposition, here are their target personas, here are their anything and everything, here are some of their sales documents we've tried. And it's got all of this information, and still you can say, now please write me an email that's targeted at the middle of the funnel contacts in their database, pushing this case study that they've just released, and it'll still give you a very similar answer to if you've not given it any of that information that it's just going to give for the next client along as well. So even with all of this information that you're feeding it, it can still not cut through. And it's really important to make sure that the timing of your emails are going out properly, that they're happening at the right stage of the funnel when someone is expecting to hear from you, and you're not oversaturating them with AI written content.
What about within the CRMs themselves? So I know as a HubSpot partner ourselves, Exposure Ninja, works on a lot of HubSpot campaigns, and I'm curious what the AI element of that looks like and how we're using it for our campaigns.
Yeah, so interestingly, I was just on a call today with our HubSpot partner ecosystem that we're a part of, and they were talking about how in 2025 HubSpot's main focus is embedding AI within the CRM anywhere and everywhere that they can. I think they're starting off with smaller things like analyzing subject lines and open rates so that they can sort of make suggestions about future subject lines, which, as far as I can tell, is going to be here's a subject line that worked in the past for you. Why don't we try and make the subject line similar to that? And then they're using AI to come up with suggested segments as well. These are all things that they've got in their roadmap for 2025, and you can get early access via the beta testing if you want to. I have had a little play around with it. I don't think it's going to change the world. I think, again, it might save a little bit of time rather than you having to go in and manually filter the lists for the segments that you think will perform well. I think you'll be able to type in a box, please, can you make me a segment of these people with this that have interacted with this bit of content? So it might save you 10 minutes rather than having to manually enter all of the filters. It'll be a time saver. It won't be a strategy shifter.
Interesting. I have to say, it was just this week and quite a few times recently been in our HubSpot setup, and I've been using the AI system within list creation. So like, I want to know who has filled out this form, has mentioned this particular field, and has also interacted on another page or something like that, and very quickly has helped me to like narrow down and create a list that would otherwise have taken me time to just type in contact property, create date, and all this kind of stuff. So in the last 7 days, how many people have filled out our marketing review form and have also registered for one of our webinars or something like that? It's a very useful tool. I do like that kind of, but whenever I'm in our email system, I'm writing broadcasts, for example, to promote our latest video podcast, upcoming webinars. I'm very infrequently using the AI option within the writing part. I find myself using the other tools to do that. Like I will be using Claude, for example, I find is the best creative writer. I'll do some email writing there, or for example, I had to write a sequence of 3 emails the other day. I had the broad idea of like, this is what I want to write about, fed it into that and said, I want to write 3 different emails in sequence, 3 weeks apart. I need to take this information and make each email relevant, and you're only 1 week away and stuff. And Claude had a much better, I could do it all in one place in Claude because I could fully write that out. Whereas in the actual platform itself, it's a bit trickier to say, can you write this email, 3 emails in the sequence? Because it's like, well, no, I'm in this one email. I can't do that. It's great if I've lost it. I don't really have a lot of inspiration in the moment. I can't write an email. I can say, well, you can help me out here. But if I'm trying to build out a bigger strategy, which is what we're coming on to a little bit later, for how to create a strategy for 2025, it's a lot harder to do. But I do like some of the features I've seen so far.
Yeah, I think they're great and they will be massive time savers. And I think just what's important is, as long as you're using the time that you save through the less admin heavy tasks that AI is supporting with, like making the list filtering much easier and laying out different workflows, to actually spend that time on making strategic decisions about the segments that you want to target and looking at your reports to figure out, why haven't my emails got the cut through that they should, or why isn't this segment taking any interest in what we're saying to them, then it's really great. But it's not a strategic game changer. It's a time saver so that the decisions that you make can have more thought put into them, I would say. Maybe some people would disagree.
To bring us back onto the question of how which shifts we can expect in the next for the rest of this year, and your point about making strategic decisions, are there any other changes that we should be aware that are coming down the line that will change or impact the way that we do create a strategy?
I don't know about changes coming. I think people using AI is only on the up. The accessibility of it is only on the up. Just about every business is investing in more readily available AI. So I think making sure that you are producing top quality people-led content, if you can create your own voice and persona within the emails that you're sending out. So what I mean by that is, you're not just sort of sending an email from a sales at or marketing at address. You are the email person for your company. They know that when they're hearing from you, they're actually getting a message from a person that's going to have content that was written by a person that is actually valuable to them. Yes, you can use AI to help you come up with some of your ideas and maybe summarize certain thoughts that you might be having, but not necessarily using it to create, I want 3 emails based on this topic to send out. I don't think that's gonna cut the mustard when it comes to generating results through email in 2025. It might have been for the previous couple of years, but it's happening everywhere. And the other thing, just to go back to the new platforms as well, is before you've even exported any contacts out of there, all of their new offerings are now, don't worry about exporting contacts out of my Apollo.io platform, because look, we've got this AI integration that allows you to immediately send a sequence to these contacts that you've selected that you're interested in. So before they're even coming into your CRM, they're trying to get you to warm the contacts up with pre-built AI messages. And I think people aren't stupid. You can spot an AI message when it's coming through to you. So I think the people-led content is going to be super important. The other part of that, the shifts that I think we can expect in 2025, is how essential it is that your CRM is set up to work effectively with the email marketing that you're doing. So that's to say that you've got all of your marketing funnel stages absolutely dead to rights. You've got your sales funnel stages dead to rights. You know when the handover is between marketing and sales, and you know exactly what sort of content to hit people with when they're at each stage of the funnel. And when you are hitting them at each stage of the funnel, the goal is to push them through to the next stage. It's not just to keep them there and keep them placid, keep serving them relevant content. It's to make sure that you're serving them relevant content, and the goal of them reading that content and digesting it is that will push them down to the next stage of the funnel if they're ready, or identifying the reasons that they're not ready to move to the next stage of the funnel if they're not ready. So giving them the option through the forms that you've got set up to say, I might fit your criteria for the product or service that you're selling me, but actually I haven't got the budget right now. Suddenly, because you've got that information integrated with your CRM platform through the forms that you've got set up, to put them in this specific segment that says, oh, I'll reach back out in 6 months. You don't have to do that work manually. You can do that automatically because all of your triggers are set up properly. And that's saving you a lot of time and helping you with your forecasts as well.
Some of the kind of parts I like, and I'm going to ask you a bit more about what you just covered in a second, but some of the parts I like about the HubSpot's addition of Breeze Intelligence and the various other AI functions is that it can go ahead and fill in some of that information for you. So they acquired Clearbit a couple of years ago, which is very similar to some of these other data providers you were talking about, and they incorporated that with AI as well to just fill out all of this information. So if you are looking to understand what this business is about, it's contact you through your forms, it can go ahead and tell you for it. Now, there may be different levels of different hubs that you need to pay for in order to access that. But depending on the scale of your business, that may save you so much time by having it just doing a lot of that work for you without you having to go for another platform, without you having to go to another integration. We personally use, not personally, but our business uses Cognizant within the sales team, and there's an integration to pull that information into HubSpot, but don't necessarily have to go down that route. You could perfectly well use Breeze Intelligence or various aspects of the HubSpot platform to fill out so much information for you, to make lead qualification easier, to make decisions on which opportunities to follow up a lot quicker to do as well. And to bring it back to the point around the setups and stuff and pulling people through to different stages, I was telling you just a little earlier about somebody who described you as a wizard. One of our clients is quite a fan of your work. I wonder if you can explain or give us a real life example of a campaign you've worked on recently where you have effectively been able to move people through different stages of the funnel in a way perhaps you can do today you might not be able to do previously.
Whew, yes. Are we allowed to use names?
Absolutely, yeah. Depends who it is.
So we have a great client called Tunley Environmental, who I think have given us some glowing feedback that is public, so I'm sure we can use their names.
Tunley Environmental.
Sorry?
Big fans of Tunley Environmental. In actual fact, if you're listening to this in the middle of March 2025, at the end of the month, you'll be able to join our CEO, Charlie Marchant, and the Tunley Environmental team for a green marketing masterclass, where you'll be able to learn all about the differences between green marketing and greenwashing. You'll also be able to get a CPD certification for attendance as well, if that is something you're working on. So yeah, Tunley Environmental, we are big fans of over here.
We are.
We can name them as much as we want.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we've done a huge amount of work in their HubSpot system as HubSpot partners. As we said, we do work with other platforms as well, but HubSpot is particularly powerful. They're a B2B business, and they do a huge amount of segmentation. So they've got different messaging for different industries, and then on top of that, within the industries, they've got subsections of the industry that, if the companies are of different sizes, then different products and services that Tunley offer will be relevant to them. So we've done a huge amount of work doing a lot of analysis of their HubSpot database that they have, and filtering all of their data that they have available into different categories based on the industry, the company size, and also the contact that we have available in the platform. So they've got 3 key personas. They've got 2 decision makers and 1 influencer persona. So there's multiple people. And we basically had to align using a lot of Excel spreadsheet work, because the amount of data that they've got in there and the number of data points that we were using to do all of this segmentation was actually even too large for HubSpot to be able to manage under its reporting system. It just said too much data, we can't do it. So we had to export it out and then re-import the fields that we needed. So to get to this position where basically what we have is different segments within the database that are split by industry, company size, and then persona, so that we can create marketing campaigns via email. But this is also alongside work that we're doing with the PPC team at Exposure Ninja, because we've created an account-based marketing campaign basically with the new targeting that the sales team at Tunley are keen to target, where we are hitting the right persona with a message that is relevant to them, within the right industry, with the right product and service that Tunley are offering at the right time. So one of them particularly is focused on when a business grows from, I can't remember exactly the revenue details, but maybe let's say 20 million to 25, because once you hit 25 million revenue, you have to get a government approved license that you're a green company. I can't remember the specific details, so don't quote me on that. But so we've got stuff that's triggering based on what industry they're in. If they've grown to this certain amount of revenue, sequences then kick in, automated sequences. They're assigned to different salespeople within the HubSpot platform so that they can then call them. They're being shown these ads that they're retargeted with that have been set up by the PPC campaign. And it's really just, it's making sure that anybody that falls into this target criteria that Tunley have is being served with the right message at the right time. And then it's got the reporting on the back end within the HubSpot system as well to kind of show what's most effective. Are we hitting the people at the right time? Are we getting responses from them? Are we covering all of the people that we need to within the business in order to kind of force them to make a decision? Do we know if they're going with someone else? Do we know if they're going with us? What are the reasons that they're kind of taking their time? Do we need to then change some of the messaging that we're using to feed back in some of those reasons? It's a really great campaign to work on, and I think we've set up a really good HubSpot system for them. Without, I think so anyway.
I'm sure they'd say so too. Interesting. I was thinking back to a couple of years ago when didn't really have any segmentation on the previous CRM that we as an agency were on. I'm talking like 5-6 years ago, and just trying to reach out to a specific segment. Like I want to speak only to the finance sector or something like that. Just impossible to do because we had 30,000 contacts and there was no AI was going to go in and fill out all that information. We hadn't historically asked people to fill out which sector that they work in either. So there's just no way of doing it. It was just quite painful. And it's amazing to see today that we can set that up I say relatively quickly, but with a lot of hard work from yourself, Lennox, having done a migration with you last year, I know how much hard work goes into it and how much effort you and expertise you bring to it. So yeah. Is there anything else in terms of like what's working today, which kind of tactics are working today that you would like to highlight that people can go away and do? Well, maybe not after this, depending on what time you're watching or listening, but can go away and make an improvement to their email marketing before we get on to creating the strategy itself?
Yeah, I think if you're, it's kind of is getting into the strategy itself, but if you are in the B2C world, the first thing you need to make sure that you've got set up is your standard automated flows. So your abandoned baskets, your welcome sequences, you're getting into contact with old customers or people that have not purchased from you in X amount of time, depending on what your sales lifecycle stage is like. It can seem quite complicated at first to get those things set up, but once they are set up, you don't really have to touch them. You leave them for however long you're measuring the results over. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's less. But you can see the sort of information that they're pulling in, and then make changes based on what you've got. You don't then suddenly a huge amount of effort that you're having to put in regularly has gone. If you're still sort of doing this whole, we need to write a new email this week, we need to send out a new email this month, what's the topic going to be, that sort of thing. You do still need that on the side, so that but if you've got your automation set up, you know that everything else is being taken care of, and you can dedicate the rest of the time that you have to the email marketing that you're doing to actually coming up with really good, genuine value add content. So making sure that your automations are set up is the number one trick that I can give for B2C. It's the same for B2B, but it's a bit more nuanced because the automations that you need to have set up will be different for each type of business, and depending on what your sales cycle or marketing funnel looks like. It's a little bit more straightforward with B2C because up to a certain value of product, you always just need to have those abandoned basket, welcome, re-engagement sequences set up, and also your review workflow so that you're making sure you're getting the social proof in as well. With the B2B side of things, it's making, I can't stress the point enough about your email tactics being aligned with your marketing funnel, so that these are my top of funnel emails to push people to the middle. These are my middle of funnel emails to push people to the bottom. This is what's happening when people get to the bottom. We're getting in touch with them on the phone, or we're opting them in because they've given us this bit of information, or we're taking them out and we're marking them as not interested because they've got this bit of information. It's just making sure that your tactics for keeping what's inside your CRM are super airtight. And once you've got those things in place, you can spend much more time focused on the inbound tactics or the creative things that you want to spend time on to draw people into the funnel at the top, rather than worrying about what's happening in the middle and are enough people coming out the bottom, or am I making enough sales once they've come in.
But before you continue, are there any kind of elements of B2C email marketing automation that B2B companies can draw from and also employ that aren't expected? Like I do occasionally from a B2B company get the same kind of review request email that I tend to get when I'm ordering like a new pair of, a new pair of trainers, something like that. I'm going to get an email saying, "Can you review us on the Trustpilot before you've even received your before you've received your delivery?" Can B2B companies do the same, or are there other kinds of email marketing tactics that they can employ from B2C?
I think the main thing that you could maybe take across is the revenue reporting. I think in B2C email marketing, there's a huge focus on ROI and which of my flows or emails are generating the most revenue for my business. More often than not, it's the abandoned basket flow, just because, like anyone else, when you're doing some shopping, if you're on your phones especially, you can get distracted really easily if you're about to buy something relatively low commitment, something really cheap, and more often than not, you will come back round to buying it. So if you do come back round to buying it at some point, you've probably been sent an abandoned basket email that triggers after 1 hour of starting to fill in the basket, but not actually completing the purchase. So you will be marked as an abandoned basket completer. Anyway, that is to say that the the ROI focus of B2C email marketing is not often translated across to B2B, but it could be. Like you should still be creating those reports in your CRM to figure out how much revenue am I generating from these email tactics that I'm employing, because in B2C that's all the focus is. It's like, was it worth me changing the subject line because has it made a material difference to the revenue that I'm generating, or was it not? Whereas in B2B it can end up being much more subjective. It's not the case with all B2B companies, because you can't, if you're selling a super expensive service, I don't know, like if you're, let's say if you're a law practice, it, it's really hard to say this welcome series to my law practice page has generated me a bunch of new clients, because the messaging is so different, the revenue measurement is so different. But I think a general focus on, generally more of a focus on the ROI that you're getting from the tactics would be a good thing that B2B could take from the B2C world of email marketing.
Fascinating. I'm surprised sometimes when revenue isn't really the focus when it comes to marketing. Like we're going to do all this different stuff. We're going to start doing some SEO, some PPC. We're going to take email marketing seriously. We're going to do some more social media posting perhaps, and to not in some way figure out how to put the performance aspect into it. You know, okay, I've generated all these leads, people are filling out my form, but you know, I'm not following them up. There was one statistic we found last year from talking to an event marketing company, and they said like a huge percentage of people are capturing emails at events and not closing them. They're just doing nothing with them. They're not even following them up. When you literally could put them all into a system that automatically emails them and says, thanks for coming up and speak to us at the booth at whatever event. We're going to call you in 2 days when you've had time to catch up, when now you're back in the office, and all that could be automated. And then on the third day, HubSpot says, here's a task to your sales team. Please follow up with a phone call with anyone who's in this list. In the meantime, the people have been, I hate to say the word, but nurtured and kind of reassured that somebody is going to get back in touch with them. Otherwise, what was the point in all of that? You've got to, as you say, attribute ROI, specifically revenue. How much pipeline is that work doing? And HubSpot is great at tracking the pipeline as well.
Yeah, and the number of clients that we speak to that are spending money on different tactics to generate outbound leads, sort of, let's say they're spending thousands per month on a Google Ads campaign or a Facebook campaign, or they're spending loads of money on doing PR work, and then they're like, well, why have I not made any sales? And I will go into whatever CRM system they're tracking all of this information with. Sometimes it's even a Google Sheet if they've not invested in their CRM. And like, there's just nothing in there until they come out the bottom. So basically they're looking at like money in the top. Here's all the money we're spending on our ads. The ads like super top of funnel. It's like as top of funnel as you can get. And then they're like, why have my deals not closed? Like, why am I not seeing more deals close at the bottom end? And it's like, well, what's actually happening in the middle here? And then I kind of go through and do this big analysis of what's actually happening, and you find, oh, you've got, could be any number, depends on the value of the product, but like, you've got 1,000 people sitting here that you've paid this money that have come in from these ads, and actually you've not done anything with them. Like, why have you not done anything with them? Is there a reason? And then people are like, no, I didn't know they were there even. So that's why I will always bring it back to the point of, it's so essential that you've got your life cycle stages set up, because then I've got 1,500 people that I've generated from this ad campaign that have only made it this far through the life cycle stage. If you really want to get into it, you can start to attribute revenue to your life cycle stages, right? You can say, okay, well, I spent £2,000 on this ad campaign. It's given me 150 people that are now sitting in my middle of funnel. There's an X percentage chance that people from the middle of the funnel actually go through to a final sale. So there was some ROI from this campaign, but the number of people that are not doing that really does astound me, because sometimes they're spending tens of thousands of pounds on the outbound efforts and still not doing any of this analysis in the middle, and kind of feel a bit lost and are like, why am I not getting anything out the bottom? It's such a waste to be spending all this money. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. You don't know if you're not tracking it properly, right?
And is that the biggest problem you see when it comes to conversion pathways from, say, lead capture to MQL or MQL to SQL? Is that the biggest problem, or do you see there are other kind of issues that tend to stop a contact passing through everywhere? And so, as a secondary question to that, what are the most likely solutions that you tend to put in place to improve that, to make sure that we are getting an increase in pipeline?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Number one is just not knowing. So, like what I was just saying, it is not knowing. Number two is not having a clear strategy to push people from one stage to the next. So let's say you have got stuff set up well, you do know what a middle of funnel lead looks like, you do know what a bottom of funnel lead looks like, you have got some automations in place or some email marketing strategies in place, but they're not focused on your definition of moving people from the middle to the bottom. So it's like, you might think, oh, I need to serve this middle of funnel content to this middle of funnel lead because that's the stage that they're at. But actually, to get them to be a bottom of funnel lead, you need to find out, like, have you got budget for this project right now? So your emails or the stuff that you're sending to them should be about that. It should be trying to ascertain if they've got that budget or not. Not like, here's a podcast that we did 3 weeks ago. That's great, keep them interested with the middle of funnel content, but if the goal is to push them to the bottom of the funnel, force the agenda with them with really personalized communication. It could be text, it could be email, it could be a phone call from a salesperson, whatever it is. But it's making sure that what you're trying to get from them is relevant to the funnel stages that you have, not just like randomly sending them stuff if you've got those funnel pieces in place already.
If I'm a marketing leader, I'm probably sitting here listening, or I spend most of my days going, I'm overseeing all this stuff. I've got 2 or 3 people working on marketing, or I've got, like, I'm in charge of 1 or 2 people in the marketing team. I'm also overseeing our sales function as well. My biggest headache is, like, I just can't seem to find a system that works across all of them, or I can't get these teams talking together, like, or reading off the same hymn sheet, or even talking about the same things. Like, one team might be talking about leads, or they might call them MQLs. Another team, the sales team, is talking about them in other ways. How can you use email marketing or the system that sets it up, the CRM or HubSpot, whichever platform? But obviously, we're as a HubSpot partner, you've probably got more strength and depth of understanding how that works. But how do you, in that leadership position, bring these teams together, or get everybody saying the same thing and working towards the same goal?
I think it's really time spent together. I know that it's like the age-old problem of sales and marketing not speaking to each other, not being aligned. I hate that phrase because of how many times I've heard it. It's, your sales and marketing aren't aligned. But it's so important that sales understand the marketing funnel and marketing understand the sales funnel. So when it comes to doing your year-end reporting or whatever it is that you're doing, you haven't got a sales team sitting there that are saying, well, yeah, marketing, you gave me 500 leads this year, but actually we've only converted 5 of them because all of the information that you gave me in them was rubbish. And then you haven't got marketing sitting there saying, we've spent all of this money on this marketing campaign to generate all these leads and sales haven't actually closed any, like the sales team are rubbish. As long as you make sure before you start any of it, don't wait till the end of the year. Like, before you start the strategy, sit down and say, okay, sales, work from the bottom up, I think is the best way to do it. So you know exactly what you need from someone in order to make this sale. You know who they are, what position they're in the business, how much budget they've got, what decision-making influence they have within the business, all of the different things that you need to actually close the sale. And then think, okay, how did they get to that point, or how did we find out this information about them? And then slowly work back up the funnel to the top until you're at the point where you're like, how can I attract the most of these people? And then how can I get all of the information that we need to actually close that sale at the bottom for the sales team to make sure that they are going to go through this funnel in a smooth way. And then once you've aligned sort of at every stage, this is what we need from at this stage, this is what we need from them at this stage, this is what we need from at this stage, you can make really informed decisions about, right, the problem is happening at the top of the funnel. We're not getting enough people in the top. The problem's happening in the middle, not enough of the people that are actually coming in the top and making it through to the bottom. And then you can figure out where the crunch points are. Like, we haven't got enough salespeople that are reaching out to them on the phone to actually get these answers, or we're not spending enough on ads, or like all of our leads that are coming from the webinars are really good, but all the leads that are coming from the PR work that we're doing is rubbish, or the events are rubbish. As long as everything is being properly tagged at the top of the funnel, you can then run all of the reports at the bottom to figure out what's actually giving you the most bang for your buck. And that's the thing that business owners or whoever's responsible for this whole thing really want to see, because they've not got the time to drill into each salesperson and be like, why is this not happening? Or each stage of the funnel and be like, why this is not happening? But through the reports that you can generate, providing everything is actually tagged correctly, they can have just like a one-stop view of, oh, we spent this much on events this year, and this is how many deals actually closed from the event leads that we generated. We spent this much on ads, same thing. And then you can start making the really strategic decisions on, I want to increase my spending on this, I want to pull back my spending on this, I want to put my best salesperson on this tactic, those sorts of things.
No, I know I keep teasing people saying that we're going to get to like creating the email strategy. I promise you we are going to get there in just a second, but I'm curious, based on what you just said there about how you speak with the events team and everyone's trying to see where's it all coming from, or where's it all going to, and is it effective or not? How do you bring in those other marketing channels effectively, like PPC? If I'm running a PPC campaign, how do I bring that in to make sure I'm getting the best bang for my buck, to use your own wording, from my PPC campaign as well? Is it just the reporting itself, or is there a tactic, some workflow I need to set up, automation, I don't know what it is, to make sure that the PPC and the emails work in conjunction with each other rather than working independently?
It's absolutely essential that they work in conjunction with each other, and it comes down to the planning phase of the campaign again. It's like, my ads are going to be bringing in people. It depends what ad campaign you're running, right? But let's say they're bringing in people that have never heard of your business before. The message that you need to hit those people with after they've kind of converted on your lead form, let's say, because you've offered them up a guide that's going to save them this money for this reason, the message that you need to hit with them with is going to be totally different to somebody that, let's say you're doing a retargeting campaign for previous customers or that sort of thing. The message is going to be totally different. So as long as you can clearly lay out, in however you want to do that, a chart or like a visual representation of how each person is entering, and you know what their journey looks like, that's the most important thing, to make sure that everything is aligned. Like, this is the ad they're seeing, that's the first touch point. This is the landing page that the ad is driving them to, that's the second touch point. Okay, they've converted on the landing page, now they're in. Where have they come into? What stage have they come into? What don't I know about them? What do I need to know about them? And then once you know those things, you create the content that's going to find out those things, and they enter like that, and then they're just tracked.
I'm just wondering about something I think that more marketing teams should be doing, which is, okay, trying to communicate with the entire decision-making unit. When people come and inquire about our services, or go to Totally Environmental, for example, and inquire, there's the internal champion. There's the person that's like, okay, I've decided that this company, this agency is for us, but then I've got to go and convince my boss. I've got to go and convince the managing director, and then got to go and convince the CFO. I've got to go and convince all those other people. There's like a group of people, these stakeholders, who also need to be convinced that this is the right decision. Is there any way that we can pay attention and reach out to those people as well? So my idea has always been, okay, perhaps we can, let's say we have an email from one particular company, and we understand that that is a high potential to be turned into a sales opportunity. Perhaps I could use the engagement on that email, see if it's being passed around internally within the company, how many times it's been opened. Could that act as a trigger to then activate some Google ads that promote case study images and things like that to anybody who works in that business? Is that possible?
I think with really advanced account-based marketing strategies, it would be. I think the best way I have found, or suggested people have found doing it, is to lay out this. So this is if you're going after really high value clients, right? If you spend loads of time and energy to make one client, because one sale is worth a huge amount of revenue to the business, is laying out within the account who exactly makes the decision and who influences the decision. So who do you need to get on board? You probably need to get the CFO to sign off from a financial perspective. You probably need to get the operations director to sign off from an operational perspective. You probably need to get who else? Maybe some of the more junior members of the team, because they're the ones that are going to be actually using it. So you've then got a few options. It's like, do you target the CFO with financial messaging to say you're going to save this much money by using this? Do you target the operational person with messaging that says this will save you this much time? Do you target the junior people with saying this is going to make your job so much easier, it'll give you an extra free 2 hours during the day to work on something else? And the answer is do all of them, right? So like, you've got a segment within your CRM that says these are all of my CFO level people. This is the messaging that works well for CFOs because it's about saving money for the business. These are my operational level people. Target them with messaging that talks about how it's going to save them headaches. And then these are the junior people. And if you can get enough coverage within the business, what happens more often than not is you force a conversation within the business, because it's like, maybe the CFO and the operations director don't see each other very often, but if you've been hitting them both with ads and messaging at the same time about how this particular service is going to save them this, they might mention it to each other. Equally with the junior members of the team, whatever the team may be, like, they might come up to the operations director and say, oh, we've seen this thing and actually we think this will make our lives much easier and probably save you time and money. If you can get that message across to all of them and try and get them to talk internally, you might not see it, you might not hear about it, you might not know, but at least it might force a decision from them to actually say, we don't want it because of this, or we do want it because of this. And that's what the account-based marketing strategy is. It's making sure that you know who are all the stakeholders within your key accounts, and then hitting them with the appropriate messaging. And then you don't know who's going to give you the answer. It might come from the junior level, it might come from the senior level, but you know that if it does develop, all of them are going to be involved at some stage anyway in the process, because they're all going to have it sign off. So why not start with all of them in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely love that. I definitely think it's key for higher contract value. Absolutely. I mean, you could definitely employ it for smaller campaigns potentially, but maybe when you're running for like a segmentation, like I'm only going to target this sector, and therefore I know that the cost of conversion within that sector is higher. Therefore, I'm going to put all the stops in. But for everybody else who comes through, I'll just put a far more simpler automation campaign together. But potentially, we're down to the less than 10 minutes, but if you can go a little bit longer, that'd be great. Unless you need to run off. In that case, run off. I do want to get into this bit about the title of this live session, the last episode in the Marketing Strategies for 2025 series, which you can go and catch all episodes of by going to exposure.ninja/strategies-2025. There's everything in there from digital PR, content marketing, brand marketing, digital marketing, if I haven't said it already, SEO, generative engine optimization, and more digital marketing. Why not? It's in there again for a third time. And part of it is that we allow you to go away and have a new strategy to work from. So my question to you, Lennox, is how do you create an high ROI email marketing strategy for 2025?
Yes, the key question. So we've kind of touched on the different points as we've been talking, but I've laid them out in how I would approach it for a brand new client, let's say. So the first thing is to start with your marketing and your sales process. So making sure you know, what does a lead look like through the entire life cycle journey of the lead, from not knowing your brand at all through to a closed deal. What information do you need to gain on that contact throughout their journey with your business to turn them into a closed deal and a happy closed deal, basically. So once you have laid out that in writing, in a diagram, in whatever it is, you know exactly all of those things that need to happen for someone to become a closed deal. Then you need to look at the different ways that you can get people in at each stages of those journey. So you need to know, like, are people coming in or when people are coming in from this top of funnel ad, what's happening to them. When people are coming in from this event, they've probably got a bit more context around what your business does because you've had someone on the floor of the event actually speaking to them and telling them a bit more about it. What forms have you got on your website? You've probably got like a generic contact form, and then you've also probably got more in-depth forms within some of the other pages that are like case studies that you ask for a bit more information to actually get the contact to download. So you need to use all of those levers that you have to make sure that you're getting enough starter information that you can then base whatever communications you send via email to each of those contacts, and that the information that you're sending is relevant and it's pushing them further down the funnel. So if you've got a contact form and all you've got on that contact form is what's your email address and what's your company name, you know very little about what it is that you need to do next to get someone to close a deal, right? I mean, in more often than not, you're going to need way more information than that to actually get something. So you need to have a flow ready for when somebody fills out the contact form. What am I sending them, and what are they giving me in return for what I'm sharing with them? Okay, I'm going to share this really high value cheat sheet on how to save X using X, but in return for that, I need to know what is your you need to, I mean, you should ask for more than this, but like, what is your job title, for example? Are you someone whose job title is going to be able to make the decision that I need to actually close this deal that I want to eventually close with you in the funnel? Same thing goes for like if they come from a trade show or those other things. Like, you probably have their job title after that because they've had to fill out a slightly higher level form. So after you know their job title, you can then segment them into different buckets. Like, yes, this job title is the one that I need to make the decision. No, this one is actually not the one I need to make the decision. So we either need to find somebody within the business who does have that job title because they've displayed an interest for some reason, or we need to discount them and put them in my unengaged, not relevant, delete list. So, because you don't want to keep them in there just for the sake of keeping them in there. That's something people absolutely love to do. And I never really understood it. It's like, if they're never ever going to be a lead, get rid of them. You're not gaining anything. Especially as CRM start to charge on a per contact basis. Like, the number of completely useless contacts in most people's CRMs is unbelievable. So once you've looked at your funnel, your two funnels, your marketing and your sales funnel, and then also where all of the different entry points are into this funnel, you know exactly where people are entering the funnel and why they're entering the funnel and what you need to push them through to the next stage. So with all of that information, go away, like lock yourself away for a few days and try and write the most compelling information that you can using all of the content that you have available for your business to say, after they come in this method, we need to get this extra information out of them. What's the best way for me to do that? Is it to invite them to a webinar? Is it to invite them to like a meetup? Is it to have a meeting with them? Or do I just simply need to ask them another question and get them to complete another question on a form? And then with each of those bits of information that you're slowly building up over time, I would really recommend having some sort of lead scoring system set up in place so that you know when a contact hits this threshold of I know enough about them, you trigger off a call, a salesperson gets in touch, and then suddenly you get a huge amount more information because actually speaking to someone on a phone, you can gain way more. But as long as you can automate as much as possible up to that point, you've spent loads of time writing loads of time, as much time as you can, writing really compelling information to get that information out of them, and then having them drop out at the bottom of the funnel where a salesperson is getting in touch, reporting on the reasons as to why they're going ahead or not going ahead. That's really important because salespeople will often forget that that's important and they'll just be like, no, not good. Or they'll be like, yeah, good, but you really need to find out why. And then over time, building up all of that information, pulling the levers to figure out people coming in from which place is performing the best. We need to stop them coming in from this place. We need to increase them coming in from this place, and just keeping an eye on it. Once it's all set up, it's not a huge amount of heavy lifting, but you just need to put that effort in the first couple of months, and then it sorts itself out eventually. If that's
I'm curious, would you do it any differently for more of a B2C kind of focused company, or is it very much the same?
Yeah. So for B2C, that would be making sure that your inbound strategies to grow your email list are in place. And then making sure that after that, the flows are going to be slightly different. So you're not focused so much on building up a lead scoring situation. You're obviously more focused on just making the sale of the product that you're selling to the consumer. And there's a bunch of standard flows that I'm sure if you just Google what are the best automated flows for my B2C business, you'll get about 1 million articles on this. There's 5 standard ones, which are welcome series, abandoned cart sequence, re-engagement sequence, review request sequence. And then after you've got those ones set up, you can start thinking about slightly more complicated sequences. So people that have purchased this group of products, but not this group of products, and people that purchased 2 years ago but have completely gone away rather than like on top of the re-engagement. And once you've got those automated flows set up, you can the reporting is really important. So it's like making changes every X number of months to see, does changing this subject line increase my open rate materially? Does changing this CTA increase my conversion rate materially? Making sure that you're keeping track of all of the changes, and then just getting to a point where it's optimized. That's much more important in the B2C flow.
I just want to put on something you just mentioned there about people being on the list for 2 years, they're not really engaged, and you said about re-engagement. I'm one of the guilty parties involved. I'm the person who's been subscribed to an e-commerce list for 2-3 years after the purchase. I bought it during COVID, and they're still emailing me every other day. Like, what is the trick to re-engage people, or should I be actually filtering out people a lot earlier and just getting them off my list and start spending money emailing people who are never going to re-engage again?
Yeah, I'd strongly recommend a closing the loop email as well. So if you sent someone an X number of communications after like 12 months, let's say you've sent them like 10 emails over 12 months, you've hit them with all of your possible tactics to re-engage them, like special discount for X customers who haven't purchased in X amount of time. You don't need to tell them that's what it is, but they just get an email that says 50% off discount for returning customers. You've hit them with all of those things that you possibly can to re-engage them within your profit margins, not affecting your margins. Then I would do a closing the loop email to say, you haven't interacted with us for a really long time. Are you still interested? Yes. Then they stay on the list, obviously. But if they don't reply or they don't respond, I wouldn't wait for a no response. I'd just if they still don't reply to that one, then get them off. Like you can keep them on the side, you can keep them somewhere else until their GDPR compliant time limit runs up. I think it's about 3 years in the UK if you just get absolutely nothing from someone. After that, just delete them because nothing's happening there.
The same for B2B. Like, how would you kind of re-engage people? Exactly the same kind of email. Obviously, you can't offer them a 50% discount across your services because none of us would be operational still. But is there something you can do for B2B?
Yeah, I think B2B less discount heavy, obviously, and more content focused. But again, similar style. Just make sure you've got a closing the loop flow in there. It doesn't have to be one email. It could be a couple. It could be like 2 or 3. That slowly builds up to the final message of we're breaking up. You have to tell me now if you don't want to. But yeah, I think a lot of people don't consider what should I do with the people that don't want my stuff, and they just leave them in there, and then it kind of just messes with all of the lists and segments and reporting that you actually have set up, because there's this massive group of people that really are not interested, but you kind of don't want them to be not interested, but you just got to let them go.
We don't necessarily have time for questions unless you can squeeze one question in.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everyone for sticking around. Obviously, you'll be able to catch this recording. If you need to hop off now, you can catch it after we're finished. And I'm going to be posting this on our podcasting platforms as well. And if you have enjoyed today's recording and final episode of the Marketing Strategies for 2025 series, please let us know. You can hit like or leave us a comment, would be great. The question I've got here is from Gonzalo, who's asking in two parts a question about finding a good quality list. So the question is, what's the best way to get a relevant and good quality list to email to? And specifically, not an inbound list, so a bought list that don't typically perform well, but scale helps. Is there like a middle ground? How do you acquire these lists?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I wish I had an exact answer. I don't have an exact answer. I have my 10 years of experience of doing similar campaigns and like doing lists and doing email campaigns for clients through these lists. What I would say is the majority of these platforms or data providers, if you're still going with like the data provider cost per contact situation, is that they get their information from the same place. It's pretty much all just scraped from Company's House. If you're in the UK, I can't remember what the US equivalent is, but it's kind of scraped and then appended. So like they look at what the information, they'll get the information for one person from those sorts of sites, the official sites where you have to list your business addresses, and then they'll see who else has joined since. They'll see their name. They'll see what the email setup is. So like if it's lennox.pots or lennoxpots or lpots at, all of those business names, they'll send them some pings, like fake emails, to see if they get a response from the server. And if they get a response from the server, then they assume that it's the same for every other employee within the business. So then they'll just go through and be like, okay, well, we know the name of this person because we've got this information from their LinkedIn or from their website, from their organization chart, and then they'll just like do that. They'll fill in the blanks for this is what this person's email is what this person's email is. Also, more often than not, the bigger the company gets, the more likely the ping that they get back when they're testing those addresses is going to be from security systems like a Mimecast, a security system that they've got in place on their employee inboxes to actually read the email before the employee gets it, to make sure that it's not got loads of dodgy links in it, it's not phishing, it's not spam, that sort of thing. So even when the companies that are selling the addresses get a positive result for the ping that they send to them, it's not necessarily a real person that's reading the email. It could just be the security system. But the inbox does exist. So it can massively vary, depend on the sort of company that you're targeting. So if you're going after a massive company, the chances that the CEO of Nike, like they've got the CEO of Nike's address email on everyone I've ever looked, because it's like my favorite one to check. They've got it on like Apollo, Cognizant, ZoomInfo, DiscoverOrg, but he's not, or the CEO of Nike is not sitting there reading their inbox. They'll have about 100 inboxes, I imagine, and the ones that are publicly available, they're never going to be looking at. So not to go too much into detail, but that's why we end up doing the other tactics that we've talked about, because it's a numbers game. And if you hit enough of the personas within the business that are going to be potentially relevant to the product or service that you're trying to get them information about, one of them is more than likely to see something about it and then have a bit of a discussion about it. But if you're just going for like, I need the CFO to sign off on this product that I've got, because that's just, I need the sign off from the CFO. So you go in and you're like, I want the CFO of every single food and beverage company in the UK that's got plus 20 mil turnover, but you've just got one from each one. The chances are you're not going to get a huge amount of results from doing a mass email to that list, because you can't just like send 1 or 3 or 5 emails to this one person within the business that's more than likely never actually going to read that email anyway and expect to get a result from that. They often sell these platforms and data lists as like the answer that you really need, but it's not the big answer that they say that it is, because yes, they've got the email address of someone in a really senior position in a really big company, but getting their attention is way more valuable than actually getting this email address that you're buying for 30p or something usually. I hope that answers the question.
I believe it did. It was quite insightful to hear how it all kind of works. Well, on that note, it is the very end of this live session and the end of the series. So thank you very much for listening. And if you would like to catch all of the other 7 episodes in this 8-part series, you can go to exposure.ninja/strategies 2025. So thank you everyone who's listened so far. And thank you, Lennox, for sharing your email marketing expertise. You've been an expert through and through, truly are a wizard. And yeah, thanks everyone. Take care and see you again soon.
Thank you, Dale.
My pleasure. Bye.
Bye.